Welcome back. I am going to have to put my glasses on and do my school marm look here because we are with Salem's true Renaissance man, Chris Dowgin, and we have a lot to talk about today. Okay. Before we talk about anything, though, I feel that I just have to tell you that you were absolutely instrumental in the work that we have been continuing to do, but we started 3 years ago on Artist Row. And I remember talking to you about what we were trying to accomplish on the Row with the charter that we had for the city. And we were a little frustrated at that moment because we had been told you can't get artists to play on the Row for free. And you didn't say a word. You just picked up your cell phone and you dialed it and said, "This is Dan. This is Kevin. This is Matt." And you just kept doing it. And I think in 7 minutes we probably had 7 different artists. And just your generosity in that moment, just like your character in your trilogy that guides people through, you just opened up a whole world. And I want to thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. That was very
And
generous.
also, happy anniversary.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know everybody, and everybody knows you. And I want to shine a special spotlight on you today because you are so generous with the connections that you give people. You're constantly just thinking about how to help people, do what they need to do to make it all happen here in Salem.
If I lean back, I could probably get a halo.
A little halo effect over here.
And did I not say, if you don't know who I'm talking about, you will know him when you see him?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So we're here to talk specifically about a couple of hats that you wear. That is artist, illustrator, and author, and also tour guide. So let's start off with talking about let's just talk briefly. You have a children's book out there called Gang Stories. Can you tell us a little bit about Gang Stories?
Yeah, Gang Stories is the adventure of 4 stuffed animals in the middle of the night and what they get up to. It's a emergent reader, that they call it, where the child gets to make up a new story every time he goes through each of the 4 tales. There's no words besides 1 page that if you haven't figured out by the 3rd story, the 3rd story is actually going to tell you you are supposed to be telling your own stories. You look into these pictures and create your stories. And every time you open up the book, you should create a new story. And the one who's introducing this is a bear named Guff. And Guff has hair in his eyes and he can't read. So you will see his pictorial analysis or what he thinks the Great Gatsby is, and it has nothing to do with the Great Gatsby.
Right.
So
that's the way children do experience books when they first pick them up, is just make the stories up because they can't read it. But you're also, what I like is encouraging kids to bring themselves immediately to a book, which is ideally what we do as readers. I would love to talk about the trilogy that you have: A Walk Through Salem, A Walk Above, A Walk Under Salem, and now you have a new one coming out.
It's coming out. It's Walk Above Salem.
A Walk Above Salem. So can you tell us a little bit about your, what is the through line? What's your concept behind this trilogy?
It starts off that you go to the Salem Commons, and there's a unzipping tree. And there's this flagpole that has a light on the gazebo, shines on it, and casts this long shadow across the Commons and straight up the middle of this tree.
And this is really there.
It's really there. Every night at dusk you can go and look at this shadow. And just imagine this giant zipper that will come down and zip it in half, and the gears spin, the skin in the tree pulls back, and fairies jump out. And then you meet this old man named Mr. Zach, which is your tour guide through this journey. And he brings you into this magical, whimsical world of Salem, where Vikings storm Dead Horse Beach, churches blast off like rocket ships, there's flying fish, a bunch of magical, whimsical things. And the little secret about it is it takes a lot from the traditional fairy tale cycle and Joseph Campbell's The Journey of the Hero. So it's a very subtle psychological tale. Same way that George Lucas read Joseph Campbell and made an instant hit. Taking the same stages are supposed to happen to bring you into this world that George Lucas and Joseph Campbell had analyzed.
And fairy tales in general.
Fairy tales always have this certain cycle, like why Pinocchio is always someone's favorite. It's the same story as Jonah and the Whale. It's when you get lost for a period of time and you get lost into a sea, which is simply subconsciousness. A whale swallows you. And the world then takes you on the night journey that the sun takes that you can't see. It's underwater. It's like, you know, the sun's usually above ground. But then at night, it kind of goes under things, just like you and the whale. And you're going to go back to the east to start over again.
Yeah.
So it's that journey. So there's a bunch of things in all three stories that will wake you up to yourself.
Right. So symbols and archetypes. And then the thing that's wonderful is they're all happening in Salem. When you look through these pages, what I love about the book, if people aren't familiar with them, is there are all things in Salem that you don't necessarily notice on a day-to-day basis. But after looking at this book, you're like, oh, there's, again, the tree, there's that rooftop, there's that, you know, whatever, all of these little things that are pointed out in the story, but also familiar faces.
Yes. A lot of the characters in the stories are just locals that I know, and I turn them into these characters. Some of them are historical, some are fairy tale oriented. But once you bring yourself into this world and then you walk around town, you're still in the world because you actually will see the characters walking past you.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that Wizard of Oz thing where, you know, you were there and you were there and you were there with the farmers, the farmhands.
Yeah.
And as you read the story, and there's also a walking tour that goes along with it, so you can go to the actual house that the illustration is taken from, open it up and look at how I transformed it. So it's meant to bring you further into the story as you walk through the town and actually see the spots. There's a map at the beginning.
And so there's a map at the beginning, and there are places that are marked. I've been noticing recently in town, like Rockefeller's has the little zipper tree, and so it's a scavenger hunt.
Yes.
That's what's brilliant about what you do, is that when we see you everywhere, but at the same time you're just taking everything in and just kind of
mishing it back together in a little compact package for you in a fun way.
Yeah, in a fun way. That's a great way of putting it.
So if you look at the outside of these buildings, there'll be these unzipping tree stickers, and then they'll welcome you inside, and you'll be able to see original illustrations from the story and also learn about the process of how an illustration is created. So there'll be different sketches and photographs, and then you'll see the finished picture.
Oh, so they can actually go see your work in these places.
In these places.
Oh, that's
So what are some of
great.
these places?
There's Rockefeller's, there's the Harry Potter shop that's on Essex Street, the Witch Museum. Who else keeps up? The Pig's Eye has some up there. Wakening and Guild on the Wharf. Those are some of the places.
Okay,
Artemisia Botanicas on Hawthorne Boulevard.
Yeah, and yet there are a lot more than these places featured in your book and in your books. I want to talk also about the walking tours that you have beyond a walk through Salem. You've got 2 really fun tours in town. A friend of mine took one recently with you. Can you tell us about the tours that you're doing?
Sure. There's the first one. I'll start off. We've had smuggling tunnels in Salem since probably like the 1600s.
Smuggling tunnels?
Tunnels.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Probably originally started with people running molasses so they can make rum later. It's an old tradition, even stemming all the way as far as New Jersey, that the surest way to make a quick fortune would be like a customs inspector. You would make more money than the governor because of all the bribes that you were receiving. So it was an old standard that they had here in Salem, going back smuggling against the Brits. And then we have a new country, and especially around the time period of Jefferson. This is where more of the book I wrote, Salem's Secret Underground and History of the Tunnels in Salem, comes in.
Say that name of that book again?
It's Salem's Secret Underground.
Salem Secret Underground.
The History of the Tunnels.
The
in
History of
city.
the Tunnels. And where can people find this book?
This is at the Harry Potter shop on Essex Street. It's at the Crafters Market on Pickman Wharf. The Witch Museum sells it, and you can get it online.
Okay.
Amazon or CreateSpace.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. And we can also help people connect with you?
Yeah.
Who
And-
want, okay.
And Chris takes you down into these raw tunnels, under these incredible places.
Parts of them.
Where are some places in Salem that have tunnels underneath them?
The most accessible one is if you can, I don't know, if you're female, smile pretty to a bouncer or something like that, or get to know the owners at what's now Rockefeller's, the old Daniel Lowe building, and the site of the first church in the country was there.
Have you been able to smile pretty and get down there?
Unfortunately, I just knew a very big, burly bouncer, and he was a friend, so I didn't really,
You didn't have to smile pretty.
No, I don't think he wanted me to either, but he allowed me to go down, and Frank, who's the head bouncer over there, and take all the pictures of the different tunnel entrances and things and trapdoors down there. but it's the only one that's left that you can actually go from the Danny Lowe's building to the guy's treasure chest. And it was refitted in, like, say, the 20s by Daniel Lowe when he took over the whole building. You know, there was a bank there and it was his, and the church was upstairs. But when he took it all over, he wanted an access way to his warehouse, where that building is now. The guy's treasure chest is in that sunken storefront.
The goddess treasure. Oh, the goddess treasure chest down underneath there.
Yeah.
Oh.
So you can walk from her shop to Rockefeller's.
Oh,
So
really?
if people go on this tour with you, you give them all these little secret little places.
Yeah.
Again, like the tour guide in your trilogies.
Yeah, Mr.
That your work is full of mysteries and little secrets and fun. That's great. So how can I ask you, how extensive, how far do these tunnels go from the wharf? Or originally, how far did they go?
About 3 miles.
About 3 miles.
They will go from the Salem Ferry on Blaney Street. They will go out to March Street on the Bridge Street neck. And then the furthest they will go is on Boston Street, a house past AOH.
Wow, this is serious smuggling.
Yeah, it kind of found out that it would have been easier to find the houses that weren't connected than the ones that were.
Oh.
Okay, interesting.
True or false? The great old names of Salem were all smuggling families.
Yeah, I'll say William Parker, the father of the Parker Brothers Game Company.
Sure.
His tunnel was underneath his granite steps. He, with Benjamin Hawks, had bought the Hawks house next to the Derby house across from Pickering Derby Wharf there.
Sure.
And in old pictures, it was twice the size, because originally Derby used this house. He had this grand house he was going to move into, and never did, because that's where he was keeping all his smuggled stuff when he was a privateer.
Oh boy. So I have a feeling we're going to have to protect Chris after revealing these big dark secrets on Salem GASWorks. I am getting the signal that we have to start to wrap it up, but before we do that, I want to make sure that people also I want to invite you back, is what I want to do, because I know that one of the things that you've revisited recently is live painting, and it's not something new to you. You've been doing it since the early 90s with a band that you were doing?
Yeah, the Bogus Quartet.
The Bogus Quartet. And so who do you do it with now?
The last one I did, it was at the Salem Jazz and Soul Festival.
I saw pictures of that. Well, you sold one of your paintings there.
The last year I did, yes.
Okay. It was huge.
Yeah, that's
so
6
these
foot by 9 foot.
Okay.
And it's a mixture of Keystone Cops meets sword fighting and dancing and painting.
Okay.
So you just don't sit there and paint, you kind of just
move with it,
move
which
around
is,
and-
yeah, we got to get the camera on you when you do that.
Yeah.
So let's have you come back to do that.
And if that isn't interesting enough, he also plays exotic wind instruments, and beautifully, I may add, a couple of nights. One night, and this is how I discovered about him. It's a foggy night. I'm walking my dog, and I hear this mysterious sounding music, and sounded
beautiful.
almost, to me, a little supernatural. I thought,
Yeah.
oh, a lot of great ghost stories start like this.
Yeah.
I go through the fog, and there's Chris on a bench
Yeah.
practicing.
Yeah. So you never know.
So I do tours of the old Essex Bank building, which is now has a gathering there. It's every Thursday, so 8 o'clock.
Every Thursday at 8 o'clock at the gathering.
At the gathering. It's
Okay.
meet inside. It's $15, and tour the trap doors. It's the secret door in the wall, the 2 tunnel entrances, and also they originally was 6 separate buildings that they've made into one large basement. So you get to actually see parts of the original tunnel in between those old buildings in the basement.
Wonderful.
All the old vaults.
Great.
And this haunted too, so it's fun.
Okay.
Fantastic.
So we will make sure, anybody who wants to make sure, I mean, there's a lot of ways to find you. You're up and above and below and around all over Salem.
Yeah.
But we can also make sure that you're connected through GASWorks. We
Yes.
can invite folks to look at our archives, and we'll make sure that, and connect with us, so we can all just
Tell me.
connect the connector.
Okay.
Yeah.
So alas, we've got to wrap it up, but we'll be back in a couple of weeks with episode 6. So folks, thanks for joining us tonight. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you,
And
Chris.
happy anniversary
Yeah,
again.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
5 years. Night.